the Arab war does not cease to surprise us. You may have said that it all started 9 years ago when there was a regime change in Iraq with the help of outside powers, with foot on the ground. But the upheaval started less than 2 years ago, in which every Arab country introduced its own formula for change and reforms. The revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt were self-made. In Libya, it became possible with the help of outside power without foot and boots on the ground. In Syria, the bloodbath is continuing, and it could be that by the end of the summer, 20,000 people would be killed on both sides of the divide. In Yemen, another formula has been invented. A relatively quiet regime change in which the president, the almighty president of the last almost 30 years, has resigned to be replaced by his deputy. In Bahrain, it was a half-baked revolution that came to no decisive results eventually. In Algeria, there was no revolution at all, despite the fact that many predicted that Tunisia would be the first and Algeria would follow. In Morocco, there was no uprising, but there were reforms, there were elections, although the king still is calling the shot. You may say that there is something in common between all these uprisings. The Ikhwan, the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhoods came to power. But then the elections in Libya of all places, have proved us wrong, because not the Islamists, but the secularists, the liberals, emerged as the winners in Libya. And who knows what would happen next during the summer and the weeks that followed it. In a way, we are witnessing a dramatic change on a daily basis. And for that reason, we thought that a free exchange between you and the panelists would be the best thing to explain why all this is happening and what are we to embrace ourselves for. For that matter, I would like to introduce the panelists. On my left is Jawad Mella, and I can tell you that his CV is very, very impressive, and I would definitely not read it all. At the same time, I will tell you that he prepared a statement that he will be very, very happy to give it to you afterwards. But if there is somebody in this country who could epitomize the Kurdish national aspirations, it must be him. Because he was born in Syria to a Kurdish father, and he was a member of a family that for years fought for Kurdish rights in 4 countries in the Middle East that host the Kurdish minorities. So Jawad Mella will start the panel, and afterwards I will introduce the other panelists in orders of their sitting. Please, Jawad.
Thank you very much, Shah. Thank you very much for coming. Really, it is a very important subject. I have prepared a statement, but it is very long. We'll leave another time for the talk to question to answer, but I will deliver to you now afterward. The case of the Middle East, it is the case of more than 20 nations. Since the Lausanne Treaty in 1923, the area of Middle East divided as Arab countries, Turk and Persian, just only 3 nations. But in Middle East, there are about 20 nations as Amazigh, Darfur, Nubian, Kurdish, Jewish, Armenian, Arami, Assyrian, Phoenicians, Copts, Laz, Azari, and Baluch, and etc. These nations, since Lausanne Treaty, they don't allow them to raise their voice in any occasion. This time, in 21st century, should these people come to alive, because no difference between people and people. The Islam and Arabs, when they came to the area, they make all Egypt Muslims. All Egypt, it was Copts, not Muslim. the small number of Copts left as Christian, they called them as a minority, as a religion minority. But they are Copts than a nation. Their language goes more than 4,000 years, connected with foreign. So the Kurds, the Amazigh, all these nations should come to alive, and because they have the right as a human in this world to have their own state. So I am calling with this statement to have a unity of these 20 nations to raise our voice, and we need your help to support this cause, because it is a time in 21st century to come back this nation alive to the politics in Middle East. Thank you very much.
Mustafa Kanafani was also born in Syria, but he's not Kurdish. He was born in the port city of Tartus, very much on the news, where Soviet vessels are unloading arms for the regime in Damascus. Mustafa Kanafani will give us a very brief introduction, and then you will be able to ask him questions about the current situation in Syria.
Thank you so much for your introduction, and I would like to start about my subject in order to talk about the Syrian problem, how it started, but there is no final image for the end of the spring, how they call it today. First of all, when the problem is started, they started with after the Libyan spring. And it was a Syrian situation. Of course, everybody, in Syria, there is a regime, Arab regime, like the other Arab country. But our area is very geopolitical and important position in Middle East. We are between a few countries, and they have a very, very multicultural and very mixed cultural, historical position. The problem when they started by a group of people. They have been to start to demonstrate in Daraa, then they separated to another Syrian city. But the regime in Syria, they have a very he been one of the very important player in Middle East and the political game in Middle East. Then with the time, they have been delayed all the solution in Syria, and of course there is a conflict between Russia and US and Western country and the Arab region, Arab countries as well. So what they happened afterward, with the delay, they've been in Syria, in the ground. They established the Syrian Free Force, because they have been demonstrating since a year and a half, and then the population of Daraa and Homs and other city. And they established a group, and each group, they have different opinion. That's the problem, and not united. And some group, they've been a very Islamist in that activity, and they've been supported by other countries under table. And the opposition people, they've been a group of people, they've been living outside the country for a while as well. They don't understand the ground, and even they don't have any connection with a most experienced politician who is in Syria, because we have lots of politicians who is independent in Syria, and who he could take part in during this situation. But the problem, the crisis managed in the wrong way during they've been started. And the Syrian National Council has been established in emergency time. During emergency time, they didn't follow it right decision during the beginning, because Syria, they need a special operation. They have part of Syria, part of population is Kurdish, and Turkey has a problem with Kurdish, of course. And especially, we have Durzi, we have Sunni, we have Alawite, we have Christian, so the change in Syria not easy. They have to be followed by an operation room, and they have to divide the opinion for the group of the religious people in Syria, or the culture, the historical people like Assyrian or Kurdish or etc. The other group. That's very important to take it into account during this situation. Otherwise, they're spending time, they're spending blood of population, and there is no solution will happen for next 6 or 8 months until the American election, because Russia, they keep the same decision. If we saw yesterday, we have watched the Syrian National Council visit to Moscow, they have a very bad feedback from Moscow. They said to them, we will keep supporting as it is. We have nothing to say until they will see a new American president has been elected to make a deal with them regarding for NATO system in the area, and other, etc. So we are going to see more bloody way in the area, as is, with the same from both sides, the Syrian official regime and the opposition and the Syrian Free Force. They will keep supporting the Syrian Free Force because the Western country and the Arab country as well, they wouldn't like to see a Syrian Free Force to fail and the regime to retake part and to stabilize the country. So that means we have another 6-8 months to start to see, because it will be a step, a plan A and B and C for the regime in Syria, of course, as we watch the news, because we know the regime is, they've been supported by the army and the military, and the army is a large number of that military from the same race of the regime. So that means they're stronger in the coast of Syria, and they're still managing all the country, controlling all the country from Damascus to other city. But we see a group of the Free Syrian Force, we say Kataib, they're working in Damascus and they focus in Damascus now after Hamas. And they will try to take the power in Damascus. If that's happened, the regime will take himself to the coast of Syria, where is all the military has been stationed and very strong. They have the S-300 system and all the, military power mainly in the coast. Afterward, if they came to this point, that means another year as well, because not easy, and the NATO, they are not going to engage, and as well also the Western country, they said we have nothing to do as a military or a force in Syria. So they will be strong in the coast of Syria, and another civil war with the deepest city in Syria, like Homs and Hama and Damascus, and will go for another game for another 1 or 2 years. And do you believe what it will happen in another neighboring country during this time? I'm not telling you that to be scared or to be, but this is the real. The city in Tartus until today, nobody they could talk about politics. We have heard last week. They talk a crazy man. He been in the street. Just he said something about the president, and there was intelligent passing. They took him. They returned him without legs. They don't walking legs. It is still, it's different than inside Syria. Tartus and Latakia and Banyas, this line in the coast, they still the intelligent and the official government very, very strong. And that is the problem we realized. Thank you to hearing us, but we're looking forward for better wisdom by international community or United Nations to see more pragmatic solution in the ground, especially after the speech of Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan has realized in the ground what is going on. That's why he's trying to find a middle solution on the ground, because he has seen the bloody way on the ground and witnessed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mustafa, for your first-hand account. And our next guest needs no introduction at all. Wherever or whenever you are switching any television channel in this country, if there is anything happening in the Middle East, or even if there's nothing happening in the Middle East, you will always watch him, or you will always otherwise read him in the various newspapers. I know him since the 80s, when he was writing for the Daily Telegraph and then for the Independent. So in short, you really cannot escape him. He lives in Hampstead, but he was born in Egypt, and his name is Adel Darwish.
Yes, and I'm also thrown out of Egypt. Just very quick, I'm not going to speak long, I'd rather go into actual dialogue with you, but starting from what Shaul said, Algeria, I did not predict it's going to happen in Algeria, because Algeria went through a bloody civil war, and they paid heavy price, and they learned the lesson.
But that happened 20 years ago.
It's still, actually, the scars are still there, and then they decided to calm down. Libya, perhaps you can expound on that. I think it's do more with Jibril coming from the largest tribe in Libya, rather than people making conscious choice of leaving the Islamists. On the Egypt, I think all the Egyptians are actually Copts, ethnically Copts. They never actually thought of themselves as Arabs until after Colonel Nasser introduced Arabism, which was sort of political Arabization rather than ethnic Arabization. So they still, obviously there are some actually Arabs in Sinai and East Desert, but they all know about 10%. So there's still, Egyptian nationalism is still strong. Now the role of the army, we just talked about it before. I think for like last 6,000 years in Egypt, you have a triangle there, and you get the pharaoh to the triangle, you get the church and the army. And the pharaoh changed name, changed sort of attitude, king, sultan, president now. The church changed it from Isis, Akhenaten, Ra, Christianity, two types of Islam, but the army has not changed. It's actually glue that's for the nation, and nation actually feels safe with the army. Obviously, the soldiers by nature are not democrats, they are not liberals, but they can bring stability. We have the example in Turkey, Atatürk, who is not a democrat or liberal, but he established rule of law, secular rule of law, and democracy developed, and liberalism developed by itself after that. And I think perhaps the best offer for the Egyptians is actually that option, if it's not one man, one vote, one time, like Hitler was elected in free election in 1933, and then what happened, and unless some kind of equation happened in Egypt and kicked the Islamists out, because they started now with defying the law. You have actually the president himself, in the absence of constitution, the highest legal authority and the highest constitutional authority should be the Supreme Constitutional Court, which actually enabled the president to be a president, so in front of the court. And what he does, he shows contempt of court and defies of court, and now it's the court ruling that what he did is illegal. So we'll watch it and interesting and see what will happen. As far as Israel is concerned, it's quite a worry. The army is, because the army played large part in the negotiation that actually led to the disengagement. It's a story which I actually covered on the ground, Yom Kippur and the disengagement talks, and led to the two-camp David agreement and the peace treaty, which is still holding and solid. So the army is very much interested in keeping that interest in security in Sinai, and that's the danger. They actually, the danger now is Sinai falling into infiltrated by Qaeda-type terrorists, by smuggling, by various Arab regimes exporting their problems there. I try to, in fact, we have seen the fallout in the last 48 hours between Hamas and even the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, and so on. So that's actually something else we have to keep in mind. I'll just stop here, and then perhaps we can engage in the conversation later.
Thank you, Adel. Thank you very much. Definitely, we'll ask him if he could have predicted the uprising in Egypt after what happened in Tunisia. But our fourth speaker established a party that was running for possible elections in Libya even before anybody could think about elections in Libya. And in fact, his group was in a way instigating the famous 17th of February uprising that was erupted in Libya afterwards. But he will tell us also why he did not contest the elections last week in Libya. Ahmed Shabani, please.
Thank you, Dr. Shaul, for the introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a great pleasure for me to address you here. If I could make a reference to Dr. Jawad, the first speaker, As a Libyan, I can present you a historical fact that Libya is, on the surface, appears to be a homogeneous society. However, we have multi-ethnicities, and I wonder whether of you know, how many of you know in the room, that the oldest human settlement in Libya is the Amazigh and the Jew for over 2,200 years. The Jewish settlement only came to sudden curtailment in 1967 when Egypt lost the war. And as a Libyan, I can assure you many Libyans regard the Libyan Jewish presence in the demography setup of Libya as salt to food. We move to the topic of the Arab Spring and how people have made a derogatory assessment that it has turned into winter. As a matter of fact, I do not accept that Tunisia nor Egypt has gone through the Arab Spring Revolution. I think in Tunis there was a stiff correction, and in Egypt it was a military coup d'etat and a little bit of the public dying in the street. The only true Arab Spring was Libya. However, we needed Tunisia and Egypt to assimilate, to excite the strong reinforcement that Gaddafi has managed to build over 42 years of his reign. As we all know, power is multi-layers, and my learned friend has made reference to the triangle. I would like to make a reference to the square. I think the Arab Spring has augmented a new corner. Traditionally, if you could imagine a square, and in the center is the seat of power. Historically, those who reached high office would have fermented unholy alliance with the military establishment and the religious establishment, and then deliberately used the higher corner for the elusive foreign intelligence, because I've noticed that the ordinary man in the street, they regard the CIA as God. So it fixes everything. Now I say the fourth corner, which is people's power, it is the only corridor to grant political legitimacy whoever wants to reach office. And I think the best outcome or the best achievement of the Arab Spring is the introduction of people's power. There are many forms of democracies around the world. In my opinion, there are only two. One, where people are counted, and the second one, people's voice is not counted. And why Libya has bucked the trend as far as the Arab Spring? It just proves that Libya managed to make a loud statement that fundamentalism has no place in Libya. We all know that large amount of funding managed to reach into Libyan political social fabric. This seepage primarily occurred from those who have conspired against the true spirit of the Arab Spring, countries such as Qatar and Saudi Arabia. If I can use a derogatory example that many Libyans refer to, they say in Libya, they refer to the banana as banani, like an Italian word. And many of the money that came through Qatar came through the foundation that belongs to the Sheikh, his wife. Her name is Moza. And Moza in Arabic is banana. So many Libyans would say yakul fil banani, which means he's eating the banana. And there's a very negative sexual connotation to this also. So, so basically, most political parties that had the impression or were perceived that they were receiving money from Qatar, actually the results in the ballot box was a disaster. They received nothing. Parties like we have Belhaj, created a political party, who is a former Al-Qaeda member, and was dispatched in so-called extraordinary rendition flights, and then courtesy to man of intrigue, they managed to bring him back. People such as Peter Mandelson played a role in this, and anyhow, eventually ended up in Libya. And he has reformed himself and has played an important role in the Libyan uprising. Thereafter, he abandoned the military uniform and set up a political party called the Nation Party, Hizb al-Watan. And although the results are not formally out, they will come out hopefully on Saturday officially, but early indication shows that they have received very, very few support. I mean, when they were doing public campaign, the people of Benghazi, just to show that they find this ideology very repulsive, they came out simultaneously. They wanted to do a copycat to the Million March in the Tahrir Square. They decided to do a march in Benghazi. And the people of Benghazi marched on the same day, men and women with loudspeakers, and they were actually dancing in public, in the streets, and saying, "This is Benghazi, not Kandahar." Now, why the preliminary results in Libya have unfolded in this way? I have a confession to make. I am one of the strongest opponents to Mahmoud Jibril. I have used every trick in the book to throw dirt on them. And when the ballot box closed 8 o'clock last Saturday, on Sunday, I congratulated his party, the Alliance Forces, because I have decided that when it comes to national security, there is no left or right. There is right or wrong. And the right thing was to respect the ballot box. Who am I to know better? And to my amazement, the Libyan people did not vote on tribal line. To the contrary, if they voted on tribal line, he would never have a place, because Gaddafi has ruled Libya with an iron fist for 42 years, primarily with the support of Warfella tribe. Mahmoud Jibril, his full name is Mahmoud Jibril al-Warfelli, the Libyan in Benghazi, in Tripoli, gave him the vote. And this is a very healthy sign, because many have said it was the classical Egyptian scenario, Ahmed Shafiq or the Brotherhood. No, it wasn't like that. The Libyans wanted a person who has some experience in politics, in managing high office, wanted somebody to address the issue of national reconciliation, somebody who would take Libya to a progressive, secular, democratic nation, not a backward nation. Our motto that we sing in the Democratic Party is that we want to see Libya Switzerland of the Middle East and not a failed Wahhabi state like Somalia. I would like to end now and leave room for some questions. Before I end, I just want to borrow the words of a Libyan woman that I have recently visited in Tunisia. She comes from my home city, Misrata, and this young girl was raped during the war. She has some shrapnels still embedded in her head, and she had an operation, and she's waiting for an artificial hand. And I asked her, I said to her, "How do you feel?" She replied with a big smile. She said, "Alhamdulillah, I feel much better. I know tomorrow is better than yesterday."
Ahmed Shabani. It should be noted that Ahmed Shabani was the first ever Libyan politician to visit Israel, and he did it last year. He also called for the establishment of diplomatic relations between Israel and Libya, and for the return of the Libyan Jews to their motherland, and I think that he also got some threats on his life. Which reminds me also that Adel Darwish was also threatened by many quarters in the Arab world throughout so many decades during which he criticized the Arab media, and I think that at one stage they called him the Arab Salman Rushdie. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I would like to ask you, Adel, because when Ahmed Shabani said that in Egypt it was not really a popular uprising but a military coup d'etat, you were nodding. Why is that? Do you agree with that?
No, it was a popular uprising, incomplete revolution, but hijacked by a coup d'etat. Ironically, the Colonel Nasser and General Naguib 1952 coup d'etat, they actually rebranded it revolution, and it's the other way around. But that happens through history. You have the French Revolution hijacked by the Jacobeans, you have the Russian Revolution hijacked by the Bolshevik, you have the Iranian Revolution hijacked by Khomeini and so on, and this one by the Islamists. And I also predicted that Libya would actually be much more forward progressive than Egypt, because Egypt has got thousands years old bureaucracy and institutions, very strong institutions. The Libyans, sort of the silver lining of Colonel Gaddafi, that he just destroyed all the institutions, so they're starting fresh, building fresh, so that's sort of a chance they have. You asked me about whether I predicted after the Tunisian revolution. In fact, the whole movement in North Africa started 18 months earlier in April the 6th, 2009 in Egypt, which is actually the rehearsal of the revolution. They used the Facebook and the social media to get people out of the street.
The Kiafa movement.
Kifaya. The Kifaya movement started in 2005, but this one actually was 2009, 2010, which coincided with President Mubarak's birthday, and there was a strike in major industrial cities, Alexandria and Cairo and so on, the 6th of April. When they tried to repeat it a month later, and the Muslim Brothers wanted to try to be in the front of it, the seculars managed again through the social network to say, no, it's not us, let's do it. So there was some kind of control, but it was actually limited, like Suez, Mahalla, and Kafr Zayat, and industrial cities, but not in the scale. So when the Tunisian revolution happened, I could actually follow the dialogue that was going on among Egyptians, and they would say, shall we not, shall we not, and a lot of people would say, well, we are worried that the Islamists might hijack it. I think what injected it, when Mubarak switched off the telephone network on January 28th, which was a Friday, that actually let people coming out of the mosque, so that they were stronger there. But still the Muslim Brothers did not really enter Tahrir Square and made a decision until after that battle with the horses and camels and donkeys and all of that at Tahrir Square, when they realized that the people at Tahrir Square were holding, then they started coming. Anyway, I really need to go into dialogue rather than...
I would definitely involve the audience later in a few minutes, but I would like to ask you, Mustafa, how come that the West was so wrong in thinking that by the end of this summer, the Assad regime's demise is something that we have to take for granted? To what extent the West misread the situation in Syria by thinking, it's only a matter of weeks before Assad will have the same fate as Gaddafi or Mubarak?
Yeah, they put the decision for 2 points. One of them is a Security Council resolution, because they submit in the end of January, beginning of February, a statement to Security Council, and they're expecting Russia and China to support this and to get finished. That's a problem. And at the same time, they get the report on the ground from the Syrian opposition and the Syrian National Council. And this member, we couldn't say all of these members. Some of them, they have not participating in the ground. They have no direct relation or with the people who is working in the ground, suffering when they demonstrate. So they build the decision into this point, and they get failed when they make the decision. They found something else in the ground. And that is the same things happen now. They keep Russia and China against of any statement will blame Syrian regime and Security Council, and still the same thing in the ground. But the thing now is the Syrian Free Force has been more stronger in some area. Of course, we talk about capital like Damascus and other city in Syria, but still there is a long way. When you talk by fight by using Kalashnikov against of helicopter and you know the other stuff, it is very difficult to fix.
Dr. Mela, as a Kurdish national who is unfortunately stateless, you, I'm sure, have a more comprehensive view of what is happening currently in the Middle East. We should emphasize the fact that the Kurdish minorities live in 4 countries. 3 of them are Arab countries, and they are very much involved in the uprising. 3 million of them live in Syria, and they were in fact second-class citizens until recently, and even now, despite the fact that the president promised them some kind of equality. So from your Kurdish point of view, how do you assess the situation in the Middle East, in all these countries that are going through those upheavals? Will it do good eventually to the Kurdish national cause?
Actually, this uprisings in the Middle East will affect everybody, including the Kurds. The Kurds and other nations in the Middle East will reach their rights, 100%. And I think not anymore will be minorities, because the Kurds more than 50 million in the Middle East. And they don't allow them to have their own Kurdish state until now. But in this uprisings in the Middle East, the Kurds will have their own state in Syria or in Iraq or in Iran or in Turkey, but they will have it and will start it from there. The Kurdish cause, actually, it is very complicated, because since the American came to the power, the Kurdistan be divided as well. Since the American came to the power, the world as well be divided into 2 camps. One camp, friends of America, another camp against America. The occupiers of Kurdistan all the time, since 100 years until now, some of them friends of America, other against America. The friends of America, they say the Kurds of Turkey terrorists. The enemy of America, they say the Kurds in Iraq, they are American spies because we helped the Americans against Saddam Hussein. Actually, we are not terrorists, we are not spies, but the Kurds being put in very bad corner about 100 years. So it needs the international community to understand the situation. That the Kurds not belong, not the West, not the East, but the Kurds, they want their own state. They want their own freedom and independence and their Kurdish state. In Syria, I think the first one, maybe the smallest part of Kurdistan to have their own independence and their Kurdish state. Prince Kamiran Badr Khan, about 60 years ago, he said we should start with the Kurdish state, with the weakest state as in Syria. And I think his view now is coming true, and I hope soon we'll have our Kurdish state in Syria.
I have a friend called Anthony. He's sitting at the back, and he tends to complain. I was thinking, oh, what is he going to complain about now? And I made sure that the quality of the biscuits would be superb. What did he tell me when he came here? You promised a round table. This is not a round table. I told him, I'm sorry, but I could not find a round table in the premises. But I will give him the privilege to ask the first question.
So you're putting me on the spot.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, think about the question.
Thank you, Saul.
Okay, John Levy.
Do you mind if I ask you about Egypt?
Please.
And how you see the Egyptian situation evolving? I mean, in a clash between the military establishment and the Brotherhood, which of those 2 parties is likely to prevail? Are we in fact watching a sort of carbon copy of the Turkish experience, where there will be a gradual reducing of the power of the military by the Islamist establishment?
I don't think a clash will happen. I can't think, because of the, it's been a conscript army since Muhammad Ali established the modern Egyptian state. So almost every family in Egypt will have a member of the family in the army. And what the Muslim Brothers might do, and unfortunately the Americans are foolishly actually helping them on this one. I mean, only yesterday the American ambassador was having another meeting with the Supreme Guide of the Muslim Brotherhood. Is they know that the Egyptian army will not turn the guns on the people. And it's an emotional, social blackmail that they know at the end of the day, probably the army will back down. And I think that is sort of, they will not actually do what the Gaddafi and his sons did, or they're not going to do what they said. And that's something, a worry is there. And that's why the army is trying now to actually take cover under the law, under the constitutional court. Although the army also has to blame because they were slow in getting a secular group. Or what they could have done, they could have dusted off the 1923 constitution, which is a very advanced constitution. It was just like almost a replica of the Belgian constitution. So that's actually the situation. Will the power reduce? I'm not quite sure, but eventually it will. Eventually it will. Now, the army can actually finance itself. And it's not as corrupt as we think. I mean, they do have their own investment, they have their own ammunition factories, they have their own school, they have their own pension fund, they have their own banks and so on. So it is actually a strong finance. The Muslim Brothers will get a lot of money competition between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And by the way, actually, when Morsi was elected on Sunday, Monday and Tuesday, the Qataris actually spent between $4.5 to $6 billion buying worthless shares on Cairo Stock Exchange in order to make it appear that sort of good news and so on, which is quite bad for the economy. How long will that last? And obviously they have what's been spoken about, it's not going to last long. So perhaps with the economic situation starts getting sort of shaky, then the army perhaps can also play the economic card.
Yeah, Justin.
Yes, if this question is thought difficult, perhaps I could give you leave to respond to Charles' eagle-eyed friend on my right. But I think a number of people are rather concerned at the different cards that the international community are playing in the Middle East. And if I may cite an obvious example, and probably with reference to both Syria and Egypt, I mean, what is the feeling here about the influence, and is it actually bound at the end of the day to be malevolent, of Iran?
I think the four of you can answer this question.
Well, Iran is, the more Iran is actually squeezed internally by its economic failure, its suppression of human rights, etc., and internationally because of the nuclear issue, because of the Arab side of the Gulf are extremely angry within the Straits of Hormuz, etc., the more they will cause trouble in three places as follows: supporting Assad not to fall, and also with Hezbollah harassing Israel. They also playing dirty game in Gaza and Sinai, and in supporting Hamas, and in Bahrain. I mean, the Bahrain is not straightforward movement for democracy. The Iranian hand is actually playing quite strong there. So the more Iran is actually squeezed and pressed, and they are not that clever to use the Syria card in exchange for some kind of leeway and maneuver over the nuclear issue.
Mustafa, Iran, the only ally of Syria in the Middle East? Can
Assad
survive without Iran?
As far as I know, Iran has got Syrian card in the discussion of the nuclear yesterday, has included that part of Asian part. That's what I heard yesterday for the negotiation of the nuclear.
Can you repeat louder? Can you say that again?
As far as I know, yesterday I heard in the news, Iranian has been included the Syrian card in the discussion
Meaning?
of the nuclear discussion, negotiation in Vienna.
I see.
Can we add Turkey to that plot? I mean, there's Turkey, there is Iran. Each one of them has a different ambition.
Well,
Both
Iran
of
and
them
Turkey
are-
is still a friend, even they have a conflict about Syria, and they have opposite views about Syria, but still they're doing business. They reduce the level of the business between each other, but we could still say they still working on in the ground together. They have the minimum relation, but they still have a business together.
Do you think that Turkey would attack Syria?
Not really. They know it is a mistake to do a war. Not only to 10 years ago I could tell you yes, but during this situation they will not find the opportunity to the Syrian regime to escape for a foreign war.
Well, according to what you say, it seems to me that Assad will survive more than David Cameron in power.
No, not really. But you know,
Well,
not really. But in the ground, they have a kind of race of the Syrian races of the Syrian part of the Syrian population, and they reached the point they cannot return back. This group of people, they killed many Syrian population. They cannot stop. Once they stop, they will reach his castle. So they will be protecting themselves. Even in the end, they will come to the coast of Syria. Where is? They're very strong in the ground. When there is a very powerful in the ground. That's my point of mine. They could be, of course, they going to the same result, you know, of the other Arab leader who has been left. But when? That is a discussion.
But actually, just to add something about Turkey, I think the only way of the international community doing something in Syria without Security Council resolution under Charter 7 is if Turkey is willing, under Article 51, which would actually give Turkey the right to create a buffer zone, as Israel did in southern Lebanon, to protect their national interest, and also under Article 53, if it is humanitarian reason, creating sort of safe haven corridors for the Red Cross. But perhaps because you mentioned that Assad will immediately galvanize popular support because it's a foreign war, because also Turkey is looking into a bigger picture of rekindling in a more modern way the Ottoman influence of the Middle East. Also, they want to have problems with Iran, and they want to have more cooperation with the GCC. They also wanted the bigger ambition of joining the EU. So it's quite a lot of complex regional and international picture. But if the price is right, and don't forget that pressure from NATO. NATO do not want a member of NATO to actually get engaged in a war that they might be called to intervene under the NATO pact. So if the balance changes and then it becomes a matter of Turkish national interest and NATO interest, then perhaps that would be the way of doing it legally.
Can you introduce yourself?
To support your discussion, I am agreed with you, but because also there is another problem inside Turkey. The second party in Turkey not agreed to support any war decision by the Hizb al-Adala and the Erdogan party. So there is a number of Alawat in Turkey. They don't want to. This is a sensitive little bit.
So what happened with that plane? What was it all about?
They have to
Were they
be
teasing them? What were
the
they doing?
Turkish government. They have to have been supported by Security Council resolution and NATO. Otherwise, they are not going to.
No, I'm asking them, what was that plane?
The airplane
That
flight.
was
That was the Russian trying the new electronic system and new missiles.
Well, it could be. It could be.
Well, they didn't say it was an mistake, but it was an Israeli jet. Yes, can you introduce yourself,
Yes,
please?
I'd like to ask Mustafa to what
What is
extent.
your name, sorry?
Claudio. I run a Libyan UK organisation. I'd like to ask you, to what extent do you think the Russian stance on Syria has influenced the West to be less proactive than perhaps they might have been? Is there some other factor in play that we don't fully understand? Is Russia trying to flex its muscle on the international scene? What is behind that situation from your understanding?
Well, Russia, they're looking for three main points. One of them is to include part of the regime in the solution. And that's one, I think the Western countries, they have no problem in. The second point is to include Iranian as well. And that is the Western country not agreed about, and the American as well, and the Saudi, Qatari. And the third point, to make sure that her business in Syria will stay as is after the change. So, of course, one of that as well, the NATO, a new system will install in Turkey as well, the radar or the other system as well.
The shield, did you hear about the shield?
No, the NATO, I don't know what they call it,
The missile shield.
yes, one of.
Yes.
I just wanted to answer your question so far as the Iranian influence in Libya. We recently had the self-proclaimed Mufti of Libya, Sheikh Sadiq al-Gharyani, has warned the Libyans of the soft power approach that Iran is using to convert Libyans to the Shia sect. Libya is sandwiched between a poor nation of approximately 20 million, Tunis, and to the other side, Egypt, approximately 85 million, and we are no more than 5 million. The late King Idris said a number of important phrases. One of them, he said, when Mr. Hammer, the owner of Occidental, discovered oil in Libya, he came to ask the king, Mr. Shilhi, if they can name the well Idris well, and he declined. He said no. So they named it the Elephant Well, and until today, it is the highest yield that well produces in Libya. And he said, I hope what you have discovered will be a blessing on us, not a curse. And one of the other phrases that Libyan always refer to the king is the fact that he said once, the only enemy we have is Egypt. The Libyans are very paranoid about Egypt invading Libya, whether it's direct or a proxy one, like what Syria did to Lebanon. And that's why the Brotherhood ideology and the head of the Brotherhood, Dr. Mohammed Sawan, didn't get any votes in Libya because the Libyans, they know the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood started in the late 1920s after the demise of the Ottoman Empire, and Hassan al-Banna wanted to resurrect the glory of the Muslim Empire, which created some kind of a political cult where you have to show obedience and loyalty to the Murshid. So the Libyans are very fearful. If they give the vote to the Brotherhood, it means they are giving away Libyan sovereignty to the Murshid in Cairo. That was an important impediment in the Libyan psyche. And if there is any potential of development in the North or the South Pole, then Iran will have any influence in Libya.
May I come back on a supplement?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much for that, which actually is sort of more in line, if you like, with some of the more, to use an extreme word, paranoid concerns of people in the West, and it makes a lot of sense. And what was said just previously from the panel is actually very reassuring, but if I've understood it correctly, can I just come back and ask, or at least erect a sort of Aunt Sally for you to knock down, because at its more extreme concern, people are assuming or thinking is a possibility that the Iranian influence is so insidious, and if they are able to overcome their internal problems, but that's an assumption no one can know at the moment, they sometimes feel that the worse the internal problems, the more dangerous the thrashings out of the dying giant might be, and those thrashings out might take the form of using Egypt, this is the extreme view I may say, as a sort of proxy battleground for Iran and Israel, and on the other hand, what people say about Syria, and you may care to object here, and one would be pleased if you do, is that your capital is becoming a sort of second Tehran, such is the degree of increased influence that the Iranians are erecting there. So please tell me I'm wrong.
Well, if I got your question, well, not wrong, let me to talk about this point. During Hafiz Assad, the father, Iranian and Syrian relation was more like there is a stability in the relation between Syria and Iran. After Hafiz Assad, the father, has been busted away and the regime has been taken by his son, the relationship has been completely to the Iranian side. There was no stability between Saudi and Gulf country and Iranian side. They've been Iranian, Syria open for Iranian for all the activity in the region, but we could say this is a legal relation, illegal marriage, not a legal relation, because the Syrian population is different than the Iranian regime. Syria is not a religious country. At the same time, the system in Syria and the Syrian population is different completely from the regime in Iran. Iran is religious, and they have a Khamenei. Khamenei is the decision maker, and Syria is different completely. So I think to separate this point, it's very easy, but they need to support a democratic and to give them like injection democratic for the Syrian population. And immediately the relation will be cracked. And that is what they scared the regime now in Syria.
Dr. Miller, you mentioned before the fact that the uprising in Syria improved the chance of the Kurds in this part of the Middle East to establish some kind of autonomy, if not independence, in Syria itself. Is that feasible at all?
Yes, 100% the Kurds will have their rights. In which way, I don't know exactly from now, but I am looking forward to see a Kurdish state because the Kurds, they have that right. The Kurds, as any other nation, they have that right to have their own Kurdish state. And about the situation in Middle East with the international community or with the greater powers in the world, I think that it is the greater power in the world, they like always to have dictatorship in the area. And they supported the dictatorship in the area more than 60 years ago. Now, they found in this uprising that is going to nations up to the service. Many nations, more than 20 nations in the area. And this, the international police, they are afraid to deal with many parties. They are afraid to deal with many nations. They like one or two nations in the area. They like one, two, or dictatorship in the area. So before 60 years, they supported the dictatorship. Now they want to support the Islamic, to cover that weakness. Because after the dictatorship gone in from the area, they are going to go. They want to support. Many people, they said America against Iran or Iran against America. No, it is completely wrong. America and Iran is one. America, if they want really to be against Iran, should change this regime, not fight for 10 years to stop the nuclear reactor. It is something wrong, it is not the cause, it is to stop nuclear. Because if this regime to stop nuclear reactor will do another reactor.
You want to follow it up?
I would like to follow it up. That's why we in the Democratic Party, we can't help it, but I always pay credit to the spiritual father of the Democratic Party, and that it's His Excellency, the Ambassador of Peace, Mr. David Sassoon, who explained to me that many of the structural problems in the region, they boil down to the equation of oil. And I have to accept that as long as Uncle Sam is hydrocarbon addicted as a junkie, we will find it very hard to break the diamond ceiling, because the essence of the Arab Spring and its prophet Muhammad Bouazizi was to bring democracy. And as Dr. Charles introduced us as a cyber rebel, I can assure you, those who agitated the Arab Spring in the virtual world do not want the replacement of a dictatorial, secular, military helmet by a dictatorial, militant, fundamentalist Islamic turban. But sadly, the international power play is marching along those lines. And if we can put into the dimension of paranoia, somehow there has been a brokered deal between United States of America and the Brotherhood political cult to resurrect a Berlin Wall in the region to block the accelerated ingress of China into the continent.
But Ahmed, I tell you a secret. The same David Sassoon told me a couple of days ago that it was a mistake to get rid of Gaddafi because he is very much worried about Islamist takeover. He may like to elaborate later, but you are a dissident as well as a civil engineer. Perfect qualifications to contest the elections and to jump into the water in Libya, and you refrain from doing so. Why is that?
Okay, because from the beginning we were active on the virtual world through a movement called the Libyan Freedom and Democracy Campaign. And in an amateurish way, without, as the Arab Spring is leaderless, we decided to convert this political movement to a political party, because we said the Arab Spring was started by Libyan women and Libyan youth, yet the NTC has no correlation whatsoever with those who came out on the 17th of February bare-chested. So when we chose to announce the birth of the Democratic Party, we chose the 14th of July, which will be in 2 days from now, our first birthday, to coincide with Bastille Revolution. And I remember we were so excited getting ready the information that we would put up. As soon as our website was launched, we got 3 emails congratulating us. I would like to ask the audience, who do you think the first email came from?
Israel.
No, it was from Coca-Cola. And the second one was from an arms manufacturer in the United States of America. Yes, and you are right. The third one was Israel. Yes, you're right. Yeah. So from day one, we have said that what happened in 1967 was against natural justice, against human rights, and against our Islamic teaching. Because when the Libyan Jews have had a continuous settlement in Libya for over 2,200 years, in 1967 we expelled them with nothing except 1 suitcase and $20. At that time even Israel wasn't ready to receive them. The only country that allowed them in on compassionate ground was Italy, led by Prime Minister Andreotti. And we say that we as vanguards feel that the Arab Spring gives us a crack in the Arab-Muslim political discourses to say that now is the time for us to emerge from our dark ages. We have to stop living a life of denial. We must recognize that political Islam is a failure, and we need to make the separation between the mosque and the state. We see that our role like the Young Turks. However, the only difference between them and us is we have made the separation using our own tools, i.e. we have opened the jurisprudence chapter that the Wahhabi school have closed over 1,000 years ago, and we have excelled in the interpretation of Hadith and Quran to extract and to remove and to purify the text specifically in the area of political legitimacy, because most of the Hadith that were embedded in this issue of political legitimacy were written by the Imam who his pen was not neutral, was tilting to the Sultan. And you have hadith such as, it's better to be under the reign of a dictatorial Sultan for 1,000 years than one day without a ruler, and things like this. And you need to obey the Sultan as long as he allows you to go to the mosque, even if he was, excuse my French to the black members here, even if he was black and his head is squashed as a piece of raisin. How abhorrent, how racist. Can you imagine our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would utter such words? And yet this is part of the political ideology, religious doctrine that gives legitimacy to those who have no legitimacy. And we have countries that are conspiring against the true spirit of the Arab Spring, primarily Saudi Arabia and Qatar, because we say that if we allow the natural rhythm of the Arab Spring, it will not stop until ultimately it removes the clamps of dictatorship from Mecca and Qom.
Thank you, Ahmed. And you are throwing a party on the 14th of July, yes?
Indeed.
Okay, so the Islamists hijacked the revolution from the secularists, and you are hijacking from the French. Yeah? David Litwell.
Yes. May I ask the distinguished speakers to give us their views on the role of Israel, if any, in the context of the Arab Spring?
If any.
I would like to share this, but under Chatham House rules. Okay. I have to share with you, when we cried for help on the 17th of February, the first people who called upon our cries were actually the Libyan Jews in diaspora. And there is a prominent businessman based in Canada, Mr. Walter Arbib, has made it possible for us to have 7 advanced satellite telephones that transmit the images instantaneously. Each kit is in excess of $12,000. We received these expensive units, and I have played the role in delivering them to trusted hands. And the images that came out in the first weeks of our uprising were the key reason and the catalyst that galvanized the international community conscious to shift towards people power in Libya. So I pay him credit, and I know that there are certain intelligence matters that I'm not able to share with you, but I can assure you that the domestic land and microwave communications in Libya were heavily jammed in the early phases of the Libyan revolution, and that's hindered the military mechanics of Gaddafi's regime. Also, a Libyan Jewess, she offered us pharmaceutical products. As you know, Israel is the #1 country producing antibiotics and other medical items that were hand-delivered to Misrata. My hometown was under siege for about 4 months, and it was continuously being shelled by Grad, and the only access was through the sea from boats that were ferried into Libya and to Misrata. So many Libyans acknowledge the help of the Libyan Jews, and we have a Libyan Jew based in Rome, Dr. Jirbi, who is a psychiatrist and assisted many people who were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorders. Sadly, when he tried to enter the synagogue in Tripoli, he was nearly killed by Libyan mobs.
David Jerby.
Yes, and I have received many death threats, and I didn't want to share this, not to give a negative image, but I have been spat at Regent's Park Mosque. I have been called kafir at the School of African Oriental Studies, Queen Mary Universities. I have been told I'm the Salman Rushdie, and so on and so on. I think everything in life is possible, except one thing is certain, and that's going upstairs. When that appointment comes, nobody can change it.
I just want to expand on a more sort of Israel role. I mean, during the these days of rebellion and revolution, the Israelis very wisely kept quiet, didn't say anything. There is actually, I'm not optimistic, because there was some kind of a legal frame. We talk about Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Israel, and the Palestinian Authority and Israel. This is a legal frame which, as long as stability and there's a legal entity there, it's going. And there is also beneficial exchanges and trade agreement and so on. And there's a status quo with Assad. I mean, this is a single bullet which actually fired across the Golan since the disengagement agreement in 1974. Therefore, when these forces actually came out and instability happening, there is a worry. So far, the Israelis on the Sinai front have been playing a very clever, or in fact, uncharacteristically, have been turning the left cheek against all kinds of provocations with tacit agreement with the Egyptian
Like
army.
Christians, huh?
Sorry, it's my education using Christian metaphor. But they in tacit agreement with the. Now I want to go back. Why, if we take from the time of Colonel Nasser military coup and the era of the Berlin Wall and the Cold War and so on, roughly the same. Why the Eastern European nations managed to quickly reconnect with pre-World War II democracy, pre-Hitler democracy, and the Middle Eastern countries could not? There's two important elements. One is the education system. Colonel Nasser actually changed the education system, and the Arab countries changed for it. It actually it's almost an Orwellian rewriting of history. And the number one enemy was Israel. The second point, where yes, Hassan al-Banna started in 1927 with the help of the British intelligence to revive the Ottoman and to create, and in fact, their target was the Egyptian secular movement and so on. But the point here is, we have the dictatorship. It started with the military coups. It started with Arab nationalism, as the Ba'ath and Colonel Nasser, and the Arab nationalism actually was focusing on Israel as the enemy, as extension of America. And you cannot really separate anti-Semitism from anti-Americanism, even when you look into the Arab media, for example, and the Arab education systems. And then you have Arab nationalism evolved into oil nationalism after the Yom Kippur War. So the oil nationalism, and who actually were in the forefront of the oil? Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And from that, the forces they helped with the Muslim Brothers before Yom Kippur War, President Sadat was trying to get the Saudis' help in bribing Africa. So several relations with Israel, in having the oil weapon and so on, and in exchange he said to him, look, the Muslim Brothers here, you take them back to Egypt and so on. And because the Nasrites and the lefties were against President Sadat, although he was actually reintroducing multi-party system, he also relied on the Islamists, and that was the genie was out of the bottle, Frankenstein and stuff. Evolved from the oil nationalism, the Islamic. And because both actually still have Israel as the enemy, now Israel is presented, all these countries, without exception, Tunisia, Egypt, and I'm afraid Libya will follow soon, as the real enemy and mortal enemy, and so on. And in fact, you have this propaganda in Egypt, again, sort of the selling gas to Israel. And I had an argument with some Egyptians the other day. They were in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords. And they were saying, and I said, yes, If you have a unit that costs $10 and you can sell it on the market for 6 and Israel for 4, but there is no market except hundreds of miles away if you don't sell it to Israel. So you have the wastage of oil leakage, the insurance, the package, etc., etc. So you end up with only $2 in your pocket, while Israel is giving you 4, you're only spending half a dollar. And so, but no one in the Egyptian media actually is discussing it in that way. The other point also, you have the secular movement in Egypt who are opposing them. They are Nasrites. They are also anti-Israel. So only very tiny minority of Egyptian nationalists who actually, or even believe that the Jews were actually born from the womb of Egypt, they only this tiny minority. But I'm afraid there is majority of anti-Israel feeling in all these new countries.
Dr. Mela, Israel, the Kurds only ally in the region?
I have very long experience about between the Kurds and the Israelis. Myself, I am about 50 years in the Kurdish movement as a politician, as a Kurdish fighter. I wrote many books. As a freedom fighter in the mountain of Kurdistan, as a former political prisoner in Syria in the 60s, not these days, before, half a century ago. I thought when Israel established as a Jewish people more than 4,000 years impressed, and many people had genocided them in the history since the Babylonian until the Nazis. I thought when they established their state, will support the oppressed people. They support actually the big powers, the big states against poor people. For example, in Iran. For many years, they support Shah Iran as the best ally to Israel. And they forget it. More than 17, 18 million Kurds in Iran under the occupation of Shah Iran. Suddenly, Shah Iran itself, in 24 hours, turned as the best friend to the biggest enemy of Israel. Now in Turkey, they support the Turkish government against the Kurds. Turkey as well going to be as Khomeini, going to be as Islamic, maybe stronger than Khomeini, because I've been in Istanbul once, I saw that everybody, they thought they are the capital of all Islam in the world. That's a public opinion. They think they are the leaders of Islam. So it is very dangerous, Israel, to make their allies their enemies. Every day they have hundreds of serial films in Turkey and Egypt as well against Israel. And they are forget all their good people and they support their enemies. I don't know, I can't, maybe it is psychological when somebody 4,000 years faced genocides and killing, everybody for first time tell him hello, say hello.
So you're saying
you keep your friends close and your enemy closer. That's the answer.
So you're saying Barzani and the other leaders of the Kurdish movement never received aid from
You
Israel?
forgot the Barzani era, Israel.
Yeah.
Barzani was in
I joined the revolution of Barzani myself. They sent a military hospital and two officers as a connection, but they didn't support the Kurds to be a state. They wanted all the time to be under Iraq. They didn't support them as to be a state.
Ahmed, are you going to throw another scoop?
Yes, I would like to share something with you on the Chatham House rules. During the 17th of February revolution, the Libyan revolution went through a stalemate period. Gaddafi dispatched a team to Israel to persuade Israel to use its leverage in the international arena to stop NATO operation, because he felt that he would be able to break the siege in Misrata, and then Libya would be divided into two countries, Cyrenaica and Tripolitania. Obviously Fizan with him. Sadly, Gaddafi still lives in the hearts of the Fizani people till today. The team managed to obtain a visa through a Tunisian rabbi from the French embassy, because when they left Tel Aviv, there was a big scandal in the local papers. How did they manage to get into Israel and so on? Anyhow, the Serbian government did not receive them, but the opposition did, Sydney Livni, and she had a brief meeting with them. They handed a disc that contained highly classified intelligence, which the Israeli were astonished that Gaddafi would share with them. There was also some strand as to the location of the Israeli hostage held by Hamas. Yes. The head of the opposition, she said to them, this is her words, she said, the Libyan matter is in the hands of the Libyan people, which was a direct or an indirect recognition that Israel is with people's power. And as they were leaving out, she said, why Gaddafi is giving us this information now? And they replied, they said, he felt he has been betrayed by all the Arab leaders. This is his way of giving it back to them. But if I can just highlight 3 important factors or achievements of the Arab Spring. The first one, the Arab Spring has defeated fear in us. The second one is public opinion. That's why I'm not worried about Egypt anymore, because they have Tahrir Square. If anything goes wrong, Tahrir Square is a safety valve. And the third one is transparency. When we came out as a political party, internet-based, and we said we recognize the right of return of Libyan Jews, and we recognize the state of Israel, in the same way we recognize the creation of a second Palestinian state, because we've always regarded that Jordan is Palestine. I mean, Churchill boasts that he invented Jordan when he was having lunch in Cairo. Like now, you see Southern Sudan, Northern Sudan, Southern Yemen, we regard that Jordan is Palestine, and there will be a new Palestinian state where Palestinian refugees in diaspora could return to. And I feel, if I can look at my crystal ball, this will materialize as soon as there is an American president in White House with a new mandate, political mandate. In Libya, on the day of the consummation of wedding, we normally have a procession that takes the groom to the bride with drums and so on. But usually the groom is held by a member of the family, and to the side is a black man, a black Libyan, because it's seen as there is a mystical dimension that the black person would absorb the negative eye and all of this, but he's actually acting as a bodyguard, as a strong man, in case the groom will change his mind. There's no going back. And the same way, even the lady is ushered by a black lady into that, the golden cage. And I feel the Palestinians and the Israelis are ready to make this consummation, and they need a strong usher to take them to the bedroom. And I feel that we will be able to see an Israeli embassy in Palestine and a Palestinian embassy in Israel very soon in our lifetime. And if I can just with Chairman,
I want to intervene here, so if you excuse me. You mentioned the fact that Jordan has been created artificially by Churchill over lunch and cigar in Cairo. And Adel Darwish before mentioned the fact that Britain was very instrumental in creating the Muslim Brotherhood against the Ikhwan, against the Ottoman Empire, while doing so also targeting the secularists. It's always Britain in the picture, not at least in the background. And I was also thinking about the fact that London itself was so much involved in the recent upheavals in the Arab world. Gaddafi's son bought a house in this neighborhood 5 minutes away from here. Mubarak's son is reported to have a house in Belgravia. We all know about the murky relationship between Britain and Libya over the IRA weapons, over Yvonne Fletcher, over the BP illicit deal. And then Syria. Everybody is asking how come that Asma Assad could allow such a bloodshed to take place in Syria. She was born here, she was educated here. This is obviously a question for Mustafa.
Yes, sorry.
Well, I didn't get this question very well.
People in London wonder all the time, yes? What is the role that Asma Assad, the president's wife, is playing? Is she supportive of her husband? Is she gagged? Does she exist at all? Is she in Damascus? What is really your thought about the level of her involvement in trying to influence her husband in the way he deals with the uprising?
Well, Asma as a wife, I'm sure we haven't heard any statement from her family and his father here in London, her parents. They keep saying the same speech announced by the official Syrian government. So that's mean Asma is behind her husband.
We know about the emails of her father to Assad. He said that the uprising is like the London riots of last summer.
Indeed, and even the last 2 weeks we have heard the same views has been reflected by the Dr. Fawad Akhras, who is the father. So they're following the same speech done by Syrian officials.
Sticking to the official line, of course. Yes. Jonathan.
Can I ask Dr. Mellor a question about Kurdistan in northern Iraq? When America caused regime change, we all thought Iraq would split into 3. But for whatever reason, that didn't happen. But in your opinion, is Kurdistan in the northern part of Iraq almost an independent state within a federal Iraq, or is it something different? I'm ignorant about this, and I would be interested in your...
2 years ago, I visited Iraqi Kurdistan, and I visited the leader of the parliament, Dr. Kamal Karkuki. I know him not since he became a leader of the parliament. I know him in the mountain as a freedom fighter together. I told him, you have the land, you have the people, you have army, you have parliament, you have government, you have all signs show that you are a state. Why you don't announce it? He said, Turkey, Iran, Syria, and even Iraq, they don't allow us. And the Americans, they didn't support us to have a Kurdish state.
But
until
my question is, in reality, do they behave with the independence of
Yes,
the state?
that's right.
Which, for you, must be a very good thing.
The Iraqis, they have no any power in Kurdistan. That's correct. I visited them. I saw the army, and no any Iraqis there. It's all Kurdish, but without announcing.
Yeah,
which is very smart.
This is very important, and we'll see. I don't know. In the future, maybe we'll announce it after the Syrian part will be free.
It's quite smart too, actually, this thing to do. It is something personally, when I was reporting in 1975, and Henry Kissinger actually was in the Paris talks, and I remember overstepping him after Saddam Hussein signed Shat al-Arab agreement with the Shah of Iran, and suddenly the Shah stopped supporting Barzani and supporting the Kurds. And everyone was asking about Vietnam, and I asked him about what happened to the Wilsonian promises and support of the Kurdish people who had never committed an act of terrorism or hijacked an aircraft or anything. And he immediately said to me, my friend, don't confuse charitable work with realpolitik. And I think that the Barzani did understand this lesson, this bitter, expensive lesson, expensive in blood. And they have a de facto independence. They are a landlocked country, they're making money off the oil pipeline, and so it's smart, keep it this way, rather than announce it and get into trouble.
Yes, you wanted to show us.
Yes, I will show that point I told you. We are looking to have a Kurdish state in Syria, and we have everyday evidence that we have the right to be separate than Syria. This is the last meeting in Cairo, a conference about the oppositions in Cairo. One of them, Dr. Muwaffaq Mustafa Sibai, one of them, Sheikh Nawaf al-Bashir, Dr. Burhan Ghalioun, the leader of the Council Syrian, Solicitor Haytham al-Malih. These 4 people, they say, no Kurdish people exist in Syria.
Oh my God.
These are the leaders of the oppositions. Just last week they had a conference in in Cairo. They said that it's worse than Bashar Assad. Believe me.
Yeah.
So the only way we have that Kurdish state in Syria to separate from these rubbish people. One moment.
Yes, yes, please.
They say that the devil in this area of people run away because he helped them to be thief, corruption, everything, and they will make money and castles and cars, and they wrote on it, this is from the God.
Our meeting is drawing soon to a close, so your name, please?
My name's Dennis van der Velde,
Yes.
and I would like to draw the attention upon, if they haven't seen it, to an interesting article published yesterday by Tom Friedman, the American commentator, in which he analysed what he thought were the reasons that the Arab Spring had taken place. And amongst those, rather interestingly, he suggested that it was the presence of Israel. And he, perhaps with his tongue in cheek, said the populations in these countries who have never known anything remotely like democracy see in their midst a country where the president can be accused of assaulting women and be sentenced to prison by an Arab judge, where the premier can be charged with corruption and so on.
Correct.
And I think he's right.
Absolutely.
That the way that he put it was, it's Israel's warts that attract the Arab Spring.
You agree with that, Ahmed?
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you entirely. That's why we cannot have the scenario that Dr. Jawad is referring to, that senior Syrian politicians, opposition politicians, are in denial about the ethnicity of some of the citizens of Syria. Our flag is of 3 colors. The green is to the Muslims, the black is to the Jews, and the red is to the Amazigh. Historically, there were more Jews in Libya than Amazigh and Arabs put together. You can see by the distance.
That's interesting.
Yes, many people don't know the secret. We, as a political party, we have deliberately shifted the crescent and the star to the red as a reference to the secular model in Turkey. When we have announced the recognition of the State of Israel, and we say that the Arab Spring is about transparency and we want to be democratic as the State of Israel, it was incredible. From one single posting, it has generated more than 1,700 interactions on Facebook, and that is a very high interaction. Libya has a demographic bonus, as many of the countries in the region, where 75% below the age of 35. Our political manifesto specifically to target the youth of Libya. And I do not use the gun. My brother is a commander of a very powerful militia that is about to go into a war. Libya is at a very critical time. No one is talking about it, but 2 journalists were abducted from my city, Misrata, by another powerful tribe, Bin Walid, or Warfella, where the new prime minister is going to be from, and they gave them an ultimatum. If they do not hand these 2 journalists within 48 hours, Bin Walid will be obliterated as Tawargha was. And that is a very serious threat. coming from Misrata. And I can assure you, I am on the phone regularly with my brother, persuading him not to beat the drums of the war and let us wait for negotiations. And I'm surprised nobody stepped in to mediate, not the Tunisians, not the Egyptians, no one. Yet Libya is on the verge of a very serious civil war, which will mean that the democracy that we have short-lived in a week and the successful elections will go up in the air. I have to give credit where credit is due. The chairman said Britain alluded to the classical accusation where divide and rule. However, I say that as an Arab, as a Muslim, nobody in the region has the know-how of building democracy. If I may use the Syrian proverb, give the bread to the baker, even if he eats half of it. Because you know, at the end of the day, you're going to be getting a bread. That's why from day one, we said we want United Nations to help us. And we are very grateful to Her Majesty's government to appoint or to work in dispatching the UN representative in Libya, Mr. Ian Martin. He's a British national. He used to be head of Amnesty International and played a leading role in setting up countries like East Timor, Eritrea, and other Balkan countries. And we see him as the architect of democracy in Libya. And inshallah, from the 14th of July, we will start a campaign where we will buy arms from the militia, and we have announced it in the local papers, in the radio. Anybody comes and hands his weapon, we will buy them back. And we want to have a similar commission set up by United Nations under the supervision of Mr. Ian Martin, that of South Africa. We call it the Truth and Reconciliation.
Ahmed, now you talk about like a politician, not like a dissident. You know that.
Can I just can I just state what my very good friend Tom said with a pinch of salt? Just you know, I hate to be a wet blanket, but I'd like to keep feet on the ground a bit. Tom did not find one single Arab columnist or commentator to actually quote as making example of his reader or her reader or her viewers. And there's a hell of a lot of talk shows, God knows how many televisions are in the Arabic speaking nations. But there isn't. I mean, there's nobody actually maybe very, very few educated people who actually can read Hebrew, can read English, can actually follow Israeli paper. I mean, even the story is not big in British newspaper. I mean, you know, the Olmert guy was just that big yesterday.
Yes, I agree. The article is not what's important, it's what he said.
I know what he said.
And what he said was that Al Jazeera, if you read it, he said Al Jazeera has been publicising these so-called faults in the Israeli system. The fact that the president can be accused and so on.
Yes.
Now, Al Jazeera gets wide distribution in most of the Arab world, not perhaps so much in Egypt, but in the rest of the world.
It does get wide. What I'm saying is, because it also part sometimes of my project when I did a huge paper presenting Herzliya a couple of years ago on the Arab media, I was looking extensively at Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera would actually pick it and present it. Don't forget the illiteracy percentage among Arabic-speaking nations is quite high, and they actually believe the authority of what the television tells them. They never actually highlight the legal aspect of it. They always present it in a negative way. So I just have to be a little bit sort of cautious in playing this.
We have only 6 minutes for a short question. Vera, yes.
My question might sound very naive, but it's actually very sincere. You know, the Arab world, and I'm not so sure now after today if one can actually, if the terminology Arab world is correct, because really I can think about it that except the language and except maybe hating the Israeli or the food, there's not a lot in common in the Arab world. But still, in the case of the Palestinian, you see that the Palestinian actually arrived to the United Nations to get a country. How come with the Kurds, which are 50 million Kurds in the world, how come we never heard or nobody from the Arab world actually pushed their forward. I mean, with so much land between the Arab, Iraq, Iran, nobody could actually give them the little. I'm really shocked about it.
Take few questions together. Take few questions.
Oh, few questions. You see, the Egyptians are always trying to manage everything.
So finally, my question.
Okay, I see. I gave you the privilege to ask the first question.
The end.
Okay, Anthony.
It's going back to the point that you made. And you mentioned the point of Israel before, but the Palestinian issue. And you mentioned that just fleetingly before about how there could be a settlement. Did I misunderstand you, suggesting that Jordan itself would be the Palestinian state in your mind?
I said the Palestinians are...
We'll take the questions together, okay, Ahmed, and then each one of you will get about 2 minutes. Yes, any more? Yes.
Nobody's mentioned in the discussion about Islamists in Libya, nobody's mentioned the Sufis, which are traditionally, King Idris was a Sufi, and maybe they could bring some peace, some temperance to this discourse.
Dear Kashi, you were born in Baghdad. Isn't it quite strange that we talk about the Middle East for the last 90 minutes without mentioning Iraq?
Well,
are you happy with that?
Well, I believe what happened, the change in Iraq, was a domino effect which nobody believed in it. That we were saying in Iraqi opposition, as soon as the change started in Iraq, other dictators would fall after Saddam. And, but it looks like at the moment, with my personal experience with the American, with the Iraqi opposition, I didn't have the chance to go and visit Baghdad since I left it in 1980. I believe it looks to me, what I say from my experience of the right panels here, they are talking about their countries. For me, I see it like a repeated video, because I was in it in 1991 until 2003, and I can see the effect of Iraq, and also I can see the bad, how can I say, the negative experience of the American actually letting down the Iraqis with the phony democracy which we have now. And I'm worried about all the Arab Spring have been hijacked by Islamists, which they are now in bed with America. And it looks like they consider them the moderate, while they are, we know, as Arab and Muslim, they are actually
dictators.
The beginning of the fanatics is the Muslim Brotherhood. They have started with terrorism. They planned to kill the Prime Minister of Egypt when they started in 1920. And now they are, I mean, they consider them the moderate, which is, again, they are repeating the same mistake every 20 years. And
thank you. You are very useful Iraqi point of view. I will start with you, Dr. Omela, about the lady's question, asking how come that the Kurds did not achieve such recognition in the United Nations like the Palestinians?
The area, as mentioned in the beginning, it is artificial borders being done, artificial people being created as the Arabs, the Turk, the Iranian. But there are more than 20 nations in the area. They forgotten them since Lausanne Treaty. The Kurds, maybe more than 4,000 years in the area. Yes, now divided by artificial borders, but they live in one area. No any nation between them. Just artificial borders separate them. It needs little bit of understanding of international community to return back this country as one and free. But it is too difficult, especially in these days, because the international community, they need just only to deal with the Arabs in the area. They forget the Aramean in Syria, the origin people of Syrian, the whole nation of Syria Aramean. And with Islam, they make the Aramean Arabs and Muslims. The very small community from the Aramean left, north of Damascus, they don't allow them to study Aramean language even. The origin nation of Syria. So it is the nation of the Arabs. It is something not correct one, not true one, because now look at the Arab countries. 250 million people in the Arab world. They say 250 million is a huge number, and they occupied from the Gulf to the Atlantic. It is the most strategic area in the world as well. And their country was petrol, the richest area in the world as well. If it was this nation, it's a right nation, now should rule the world. But they are the last nation in the world. Was biggest area in the connected with Europe, Africa, and Asia. Very important area they have. Very important strategic area. They very rich, and 200 million should rule in the world. But they are not Arabs. The Islam, they make them Arabs. They are Aramic, Kurds, Amazigh, 20 nations. They forget them since the Lausanne Treaty. And I hope now everybody, they want to know, understand this situation. Yeah. My statement is here.
Dr. Miller will be happy to give you a statement after the meeting.
After the meeting to have a copy of it.
Thank you, Jawad. Mustafa, can you take the risk and predict in 2 minutes what could happen in Syria in the next 6 months or so?
Well, without surprise, there is nothing will happen. If there is a big surprise in the military and they've been separated from the regime, it will be a surprise and it will be a real change soon. Or if there is a deal between the head of the regime, Assad, and the friend countries like Iranian or Russian or the Chinese. Because otherwise it will be the problem longer and more bloody with tightly around neighboring countries, Lebanon and Iraq especially, and Turkish border as well.
Thank you. Adel, the future of the uprising in a nutshell?
First of all, I mean, there will be no Kurdish nation unless there are balances of power strategically, internationally, and regionally that would lead to creation of Kurdish nation. I agree with you about the artificiality of Arab sins that goes back to the 7th century with the Arab invasion. This went to modern ideology like Ba'athist and Nasrite and so on. Syria, I'm afraid, will still be with us for quite some time to come. We have a weak president who talks too much, talks too well, and talks too loud in the White House, but no action. At least Bush and Reagan. I mean, Reagan won the Cold War, but also had Thatcher in London. So we don't have Reagan Thatcher anymore in the international community. So it isn't good. Yes, I agree with you. The granddaddy of terrorism are the Muslim Brothers. And by the way, actually, on one of my blogs called InsideUKPolitics.com, there is actually a piece on the whole misconception of Fleet Street and British media in reporting the so-called moderate Muslim and moderate and so on. Either sort of part of the British intelligence MI6, the former chap who was actually setting up with Qatari and Saudi money and foreign office money an institute in Beirut, and they're really promoting the whole concept of, yes, let's have a moderate Islamist, what they see as moderate Islamist, and I'm not optimistic in general. In Egypt, some of the liberals, even Christian and women, argue, especially the left, the Guardian sort of type people, that give Morsi a chance, yes, have a coalition government, have a national unity government. And my advice to them was, look at Iran, you'd be the first to be dangling from lampposts, and let them, you form a strong opposition party. If al-Baradei and if the secular and nationalist Egyptian movement managed to actually form a strong opposition and contest the election there, protected perhaps by the army, then maybe something would come out. But I'm not optimistic in general.